Stuck in a relationship with my daughter's mom, I've felt more alone than ever. I love you so much, she says, but I dread our future together. Is it postpartum depression or just my sanity breaking? As the walls close in, I wonder if it's time to say goodbye. To summarize briefly, we dated for 5 months before I accidentally got her pregnant. We decided to keep and raise the baby, but after more than a year and a half of our romantic relationship being on hold, I feel that the connection we had is no longer present. However, I am struggling to determine if my feelings stem from depression and if my expectations are unreasonable. We have been attempting to make it work, but I feel emotionally anxious and unhappy. Background: when I refer to being single, I mean completely single. Not casually dating or hooking up. Instead, I am an adult man who is not engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with women. For most of my adult life, I was very comfortable being single. I had one serious relationship in high school that ended poorly and dated a few girls for less than a couple of months. However, it never became serious. We never moved in together or developed anything beyond a few dates and some intimacy, after which I realized I was not ready to commit to a long-term relationship. Out of the 7 years of my adulthood preceding my relationship with her, I actively sought women or dated only for 6 months, spread out over those years. I generally prefer being alone and enjoy having ample alone time. I have two close friends with whom I spend just under half of my free time when possible. I have serious mental health issues and have experienced depression on and off since I was about 7. I was hospitalized for a suicide attempt at 19 and have gradually been trying to climb out of that deep pit of depression for years. At approximately 24 and a half years old, I felt stable enough and had worked on myself sufficiently to consider serious dating. Whether this was true remains uncertain even now. Anyway, it must have been evident that I was single and looking to meet someone, as one of my coworkers reached out unexpectedly and we started talking. Our relationship advanced quickly, and I felt that I had never gotten along so well with anyone before. We bonded effortlessly, and being together felt incredibly natural. I did not feel like I was forcing myself as I had with previous partners. I suppose most people feel this way about someone when they fall in love. Honestly, I don't believe I had ever truly been in love until then, so perhaps I mistook compatibility for love. Around 3 months into our relationship, she moved in with me, and we certainly began to argue a little, though not excessively. Most of our arguments revolved around how we prioritized our time. I wanted to spend time alone or with friends, but although she would say, "Sure, darling, I have no problem with that," in a sweet manner, it always became an issue. Additionally, whenever I attempted to discuss our differing viewpoints or any mild disagreement, she would shut down completely and refuse to engage. Sometimes she would retreat to our room and go to sleep if I brought something up. I believe she developed this shutdown response as a defense mechanism stemming from her childhood and her relationship with her father. She often expressed a desire for children, which I only somewhat considered. At some point, she discontinued her birth control. Honestly, I am just beginning to realize why this all troubled me as I write this. By around month 4, I started to contemplate what life would be like with children and her, and even though I was still very much in love with her, I felt I would not want that life with her. Then I made a mistake and did not use protection on one occasion. I know that I am entirely responsible for failing to take precautions. This incident shocked me and forced me to reflect deeply on whether I wanted a future with her. I suppose even a single occasion can have significant consequences. Eventually, we discovered around month 5 of our relationship that she was pregnant. I was quite alarmed, but I assured her that we would handle it together. She expressed a desire to keep the baby, which I anticipated, so we began planning for our future and preparing for the stable home we would need for our child by the time he or she was born. Throughout the entire pregnancy, I set aside my own wants and needs to support her as much as possible. She wanted to be near her family, and mine were too religious to provide support, so we moved 900 miles away to an area where I knew no one. I withdrew from college and incurred substantial debt during this time, trying to manage everything necessary to provide her with a comfortable pregnancy. During the pregnancy, it felt as though our romantic relationship was entirely suspended. Even though she consistently claimed that our relationship was a priority for her, it genuinely felt like it was not. I understand that maintaining a romantic relationship may not be the most important consideration for a woman during pregnancy. However, I believe that we should use that time to learn more about each other and deepen our connection. Instead, I sensed a constant push away from her. I researched how women's hormones affect them during pregnancy and began to suspect that she might have been experiencing significant depression. I can only say suspect because no matter how often I encouraged her to open up, I faced the same stonewalling and dismissal, along with her typically quiet responses. I understand it can be extremely difficult for pregnant women, as I observed my mother become quite depressed during her pregnancies. But if you are trying to maintain a relatively new relationship and genuinely care, you must make an effort. At some point during the second trimester, I broke down and expressed to her that I felt profoundly alone and unheard in our relationship and that I was struggling to keep it together on my own. She burst into tears and promised to try to do better, vowing not to shut down every time I initiated a serious conversation. She at least partially convinced me that she would attempt to make a change, spoiler alert. She did not, and she still mostly ignores me when I discuss my feelings. Throughout the entire pregnancy, there was considerable tension between us, and at times it felt as if we were on the brink of breaking up. Each time things escalated, I instinctively pushed my emotions down, striving to be supportive and understanding while telling myself she needed time and assistance. I was the sole breadwinner throughout her pregnancy and until our daughter was 6 months old, which added immense financial stress. I often found myself sitting alone in my car, experiencing screaming panic attacks a few times each week. Eventually, our daughter was born. The same old issues persisted. Ironically, throughout our relationship, she has consistently told me, "I love you so much, you mean the world to me, I couldn't do this without you," and I genuinely believe that she loves me. However, over the past 5 or 6 months, my own ability to invest in the relationship has plummeted. I have made significant efforts to do everything within my power to make her happy and lighten her load. Since we use formula, there has never been a need or reason for a designated primary parent, and I took every opportunity I could to benefit from that arrangement. Whenever I sensed that I had contributed less than 40% of the baby care during a week, I compensated by taking over 80%. When it comes to household chores, we divide them equally, 50% each without question. I have encountered numerous discussions online stating that men typically do not contribute enough during the postpartum months, and I firmly believe I have done my best to defy that stereotype. We both work 35 to 40 hours a week, and due to formula feeding, we have effortlessly shared the responsibilities. I felt secretly relieved when she mentioned not wanting to nurse, as I could not bear the thought of being anything less than an equal partner in feedings. Around Christmas, which coincides with my birthday, I experienced an overwhelming sensation of I no longer care, and I realized that I felt significantly happier when I was not with her. To be honest, she is not a bad person at all. She is very kind, an exceptional mother, and a decent friend during our shared activities or games. However, I cannot reconcile the fact that she shuts down communication so quickly and effortlessly. I have truly begun to feel I cannot stand the thought of spending the rest of my life with her, yet we have built an entire life together. So much ties us together. I have tried explaining to her how deeply flawed our relationship has felt recently, but unsurprisingly her response is always silence. Occasionally, she might attempt to distract me from my feelings by initiating intimacy, which often succeeds, but of course the hurt remains afterward. I have made substantial efforts to enhance the romantic aspect of our relationship throughout the pregnancy and post-delivery. I have taken her on weekly dates, purchased her clothing and other items she enjoys, and arranged in-home movie nights and game nights. Despite my persistent efforts, even though she is somewhat responsive and we do have regular intimacy, I have started to feel a significant lack of emotional closeness with her. For me, intellectual and verbal intimacy are essential, yet they do not seem to matter to her at all. It feels as if I am trying to navigate a traditional husband and wife dynamic with someone who is simply okay with going through the motions, lacking any interest in fully engaging with the intricacies that make a relationship work, at least one that I could envision being in long term. I require a higher level of communication to feel a connection to her. Even previous girlfriends I left for different reasons could at least engage in meaningful conversation, and I find it impossible to imagine spending the next 20 years, or more, with someone who cannot provide that, not even regarding our relationship. It is more than just that. I also feel sidelined and ignored, and I believe we have not invested enough time, just the two of us, to establish a solid foundation that can endure the stress of raising children together. I realize much of this may sound like me simply complaining about her, but I want to reiterate that she is genuinely a good person. I just find it incredibly difficult to feel close to her. After sacrificing so much of my life to support her and care for our child, I feel I should at least receive a common courtesy response when I express a simple frustration. I have no friends or family nearby. Essentially, the only person I know here is her. I feel immense stress every day in her presence. Recently, I have come to the realization of several truths. One, time spent away from her feels incredibly freeing, and I often fantasize about being single again, not single in the casual sense, but rather being alone and again enjoying my own company as an introverted mess. Two, my mental health challenges make it difficult for me to maintain more than one intense relationship at a time. I believe I could be a more present and satisfied parent if I only had to focus on my daughter. Three, she is a wonderful mother and a good friend, but a terrible romantic partner. I have genuinely tried to do everything that people say is the right approach, but that has not changed anything. She does not seem to hear me, believing that our relationship will resolve itself if she ignores the issues. I cannot continue living like this forever and have been struggling against this barrier for over a year and a half. I feel she would excel as a co-parent rather than as a girlfriend. I am desperately seeking advice on what steps to take next. I recognize that elements of this situation, both on my part and hers, could be affected by postpartum depression. I am also genuinely terrified about the potential for significant financial hardship if we were to separate now. This question does not concern custody or child support, as I have no doubt that I will be just as much of a father to my daughter apart from her mother as I am now. How do I determine when it is time to give up and tell her I want to part ways? What if the moment we reconnect and feel like a loving couple again is just around the corner? I understand that children can strain relationships, but what is left for us if 18 of the 23 months we have been together have been focused almost entirely on the most unromantic aspects of life? I want to believe that everything can somehow be fine despite the intense feelings I have expressed. I truly want to believe that we can make this work. She claims to love me, and I sense that she has become quite attached in certain ways. I genuinely do not want to hurt her or ruin her life. However, there are essential elements in a relationship that I need and will not compromise on, which she does not seem capable of providing. Moreover, my experiences alongside hers have not given me enough reassurance to believe I will ever receive it. To summarize, when should I consider giving up on trying to make our relationship work for the sake of our daughter? If I decide to leave, how do I gently break the news and separate from her while ensuring our financial security remains intact? Edit, I have been concerned that my emotions might be connected to postpartum depression due to my own mental health history and suicidal tendencies. Since my daughter's birth, I have experienced an increase in suicidal thoughts, but I am unsure if this situation would persist for as long as it has, particularly for a man. Story 2. My husband claims my job is just typing, while he leaves chores piled high for months despite our agreement. I'm exhausted from working 3 jobs and fighting over messes. If I did what you do, I'd be able to do more, he said. Can our marriage survive this divide? Hello, I am not skilled at selecting titles, and the situation is somewhat more complex, but here I go. I have been with my husband for approximately 7 years, 2 of which we have been married. Initially, we were both employed and were both very dedicated workers. I typically returned home late after managing numerous responsibilities. Since I lived alone, I also handled all of the day-to-day necessities, while my husband, who lived with his parents, frequently worked overtime simply because he enjoyed his job immensely. We both specialize in language-related work. Please let me know if you need additional information. At the beginning of our marriage, my husband unexpectedly lost his job. It came as a shock since he was performing well, and it significantly affected him emotionally. However, I reassured him that everything would turn out fine, as he is genuinely skilled at what he does. We established an agreement. He would take on the majority of household chores while searching for a new job, and I would concentrate on my work, except for specific tasks that I prefer to handle myself because I am more organized and less prone to forgetfulness, such as managing bills, scheduling appointments, and doing laundry. As my clothes require a level of care I do not wish to burden him with. This arrangement did not yield favorable results from the outset. My husband is a good cook, which is a positive aspect, but beyond that, he does the bare minimum to avoid being unhygienic. He washes the dishes, takes out the trash, uses the robotic vacuum to clean the floors, and places his dirty clothes in the designated laundry area. However, that is the extent of his efforts. He only cleans surfaces like the sink or furniture when I plead with him to do so, which may only happen after a month or two, and he consistently leaves items on tables and elsewhere in the home without putting them away. This leads to clutter and dust accumulation. Initially, I kept reminding him about these tasks, but I have ceased doing so recently, as I felt I might be micromanaging. One example of this situation occurred when he left a bag containing a clothing item he needed to take to the tailor, which is a 10-minute walk away, on a chair for 2 months. To the point that when I asked him if I should take it instead, he could not even recall where he had placed it, even though it was literally in plain sight in the living room. I have discussed this with him, and he insists that he cannot focus on anything else while he is stressed about job hunting. I empathize with his feelings, so I told him to let me know if he wishes to modify the division of labor, as I would prefer to be informed in advance if there are tasks I need to take on, so I can incorporate them into my schedule, rather than receiving false assurance that something will be completed only to discover that it remains undone weeks or months later. He responds by telling me not to worry and to leave it to him. This situation has reached a critical point recently because my job has unexpectedly become more demanding. I generally have been able to take care of more household tasks, whether he asks for help or not, but in recent months I have barely had any time to manage anything outside of work. My company's most important client has initiated several lengthy, specialized projects simultaneously, with deadlines that are barely feasible even with a full team. To complicate matters, we are 2 employees short. My company is reluctant to decline requests from the client, and I do not want to refuse my company as my job is otherwise excellent and pays better than 90% of positions in my field, as well as being the sole source of income that supports both me and my husband. I have effectively been working as if I were responsible for 3 people nonstop. I often go to bed with headaches, wake up with headaches, and experience back pain. My fingers have begun to twitch as if I were a worker in a pre-industrial revolution factory. I have still been managing administrative tasks at home, but I honestly lack the physical or emotional strength to clear the clutter from tables and other surfaces. Most days, I do not even have the energy to engage with friends anymore. During this period, there have been fights whenever the weekend or a holiday arrives. I tend to initiate them. I wake up with enough time to notice my surroundings and I still see items and bags lingering from weeks prior. I become frustrated and ask him why he cannot uphold his portion of the agreement as I do. Yesterday, he told me in more or less these terms, "If I did what you do, I would be able to accomplish more and faster. Your job only requires you to sit and type." It is not the same. I recognize that this may appear irrational, but I could contemplate divorce over this issue. I felt intense anger all of last night, but while writing this, I realized that if it were anyone else, I would calmly advise them to leave. Yes, if I turn off my rational thoughts and disregard adult responsibilities, I still love my husband. He possesses a wealth of knowledge, is engaging to converse with, is very attractive, and I enjoy spending time together. However, as soon as I assess our life together, I feel like an automated teller machine. This is not the first time he has suggested that my job is easier, and I am weary of hearing it when I know I am working significantly harder than someone who dusts shelves for an hour every month. He contends that he did not intend for it to be a comparison. He merely aimed to convey that my job is easier in isolation, but even then, what does that even mean? And why should it matter in relation to his failure to complete the tasks we agreed he would handle? I apologize if this has devolved into a rant. I suppose I want to know. Does this indicate that we are both being unreasonable? Is this a matter of miscommunication? Would couples counseling be beneficial? Should I seek another job, even if it means sacrificing financial stability and potentially worsening our situation? I am at a loss for words, simply feeling exhausted and desiring a resolution without continuing to argue over these issues. Summary: I, 29 female, and my unemployed husband, 31 male, frequently argue about the division of household chores. We reached an agreement, but it is not functioning as intended, and I feel misled and exploited while my husband claims he is overwhelmed by his own circumstances. Meanwhile, I am resentful as I sacrifice my own well-being to maintain a lucrative job.